The Houston Texans have officially completed the fastest rebuild in NFL history, and in just 1 year, they went from winning 6 games in the past 2 seasons to nearly doubling their win total, hiring a new coach and drafting the greatest rookie quarterback we've seen in the past decade. And just when you thought they were finished, they turn around and do this.
Big trade happening in the AFC involving Stephon Diggs.
Major breaking news coming out of the NFL where we have a blockbuster trade.
The Houston Texans have traded for Stephon Diggs.
Wow. But how did they do that? How did the Houston Texans outdraft and outmaneuver the other 31 teams on the way to putting together a potential dynasty? Here's the timeline of how the Houston Texans completed the fastest rebuild in NFL history. The 2021 season was the beginning of a downward spiral for the Houston Texans, with the playoffs nowhere in sight, finishing the 2021 season with a record of 4-13, and the team was just completely lost.
There are people every week that still tweet you, that still come up to you and say, hey, we're still rooting for you. We're still behind you. They have no reason whatsoever to. We stink. That's who I feel the most bad for is our fans.
Especially after trading away one of their most valuable assets the season before in DeAndre Hopkins for literal beans and rice.
DeAndre Hopkins is part of that deal.
I don't know what the hell is going on in Houston. I don't know what pictures Bill O'Brien has on ownership there. So something's up. To trade this dude and don't even get a first-round pick, it's damn near a fireable offense, if not a flat-out one.
But, and you heard it, Stephen A. talking about, well, he wanted a new contract, and we don't do that. You did it for J.J. Watt. You did it for J.J. Watt. What do you mean you don't do it? You don't let this kind of talent leave the building.
And due to their lack of offensive weapons, the team decided to address the offensive side of the ball in the draft. And I mean, although they didn't have many picks in that draft, the Texans took a shot on a 3rd-round quarterback out of Stanford in Davis Mills to be their savior, as well as a 6'4" freak out of Michigan in Nico Collins to revitalize the team. Ultimately though, those two just weren't able to do it all by themselves. Despite starting 11 games in 2021 and splitting starts and games with Tyrod Taylor, Davis Mills and the Texans only won 3 games. They knew it was time for a change, and just after his first season in a miserable tenure with Bill O'Brien the season prior, the Texans fired David Culley after posting a 4-13 record as the team's head coach. The Texans decided to promote defensive coordinator Lovie Smith as the team's 5th head coach on February 7th, 2022. Lovie Smith was thought to be able to revitalize the defense and provide some sort of stability for this team after being one of the worst defenses the years before. And not so long after the announcement of Smith becoming the new head coach, the team then just 1 year later, after trading their superstar wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins for literal beans and rice, made a franchise-altering trade that would be the birth of a new dynasty and the demise of another franchise.
Where is Deshaun going next?
Deshaun Watson is expected to be a member of the Cleveland Browns.
This is unheard of in the history of this league. It's never happened before. He shattered the guaranteed money recently set by one Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay.
Right, but maybe this has a Matthew Stafford type impact on this team.
After successfully trading away Deshaun Watson and absolutely ripping off the Browns in the process, the Texans went into the 2022 draft and added some key pieces to their offense and defense instead of opting to take a quarterback in this draft. I mean, they completely overlooked the position, likely keeping in the mind that the 2023 NFL draft class was absolutely stacked at quarterback. Instead, with their 1st-round draft pick, they were able to land a very solid corner in Derek Stingley and safety Jalen Petrie in hopes to replace Justin Reed, who had walked during free agency. And while not doing much else in this draft, they really wouldn't feel the effects of that Watson trade until the following draft year. Heading into the 2022 season though, the Texans had, safe to say, one of the worst rosters in the NFL, but it was also one of the youngest offensive rosters with an average age of 26. But on defense, I mean, they honestly were just abysmal. They had a lot of guys with a lot of potential, but just question marks all over the field. And due to this, Vegas had their win total somehow at 5, but many analysts picked them to be the worst team in the NFL and only win 1 game. And boy, did they suck. They ranked as the 30th team in points and 24th for points allowed, not really making any improvement on either side of the ball. But you mostly probably could say that was due in part to the youth of this team, a somewhat terrible coach in Lovie Smith, and I mean honestly just the lack of talent that this team had. The team well underperformed by this large margin. And in doing so and underperforming by such a large margin, they were able to lock up the first overall pick. Or so they thought.
And the Chicago Bears have just, as improbable as it may have been at the beginning of the day, the Bears have just clinched the #1 pick in the upcoming NFL draft.
Many people around the league were confused and in shock of the Texans winning the game and giving up the first overall pick to the Bears.
Pretty simple. I mean, you play to win the game. It's kind of simple as that. That's all the way down in our organization.
So even when the Texans didn't need to win, they failed at failing here on Sunday. This was a franchise-altering win. And you don't like to talk about wins that way, but this was incredibly costly. They won a meaningless game.
And you did everything right and did everything the way you should, and you comported yourself and your team right, and you should have nailed the 2-point conversion.
Now headed into the offseason though, the team knew that they had to change things, and after a very questionable way to end the season, and I mean along with him showing absolutely no improvement with the team, the Texans decided to fire Lovie Smith. Smith's dismissal marked the second straight year in which the Texans fired their head coach after 1 season on the job.
And the Texans prove yet again that they are not a real organization. It would be a blessing from above if they were to request permission to interview their former, I think he was taken with the first pick of the 2nd round in the 06 draft, if memory serves. A blessing from above if they requested DeMeco Ryans, to interview DeMeco Ryans for the head coach position, and he actually entertained the job, let alone took it. That would be quite an accomplishment for these Houston Texans.
And I mean, to say the least, they were given that blessing on January 31st.
And we've got some more breaking news out of the NFL where the Houston Texans are finalizing a deal to make DeMeco Ryans their next head coach. That's been reported by our NFL insider Jonathan Jones.
DeMeco Ryans was everything you wanted in a head coach. He was a former player playing for the Texans and Eagles as a linebacker from 2006 to 2015 before being brought on to be a part of the Niners coaching staff and join the Shanahan coaching tree. He even said that this Houston Texans job was his dream job and he wanted to be a part of this rebuild and knew that they could do something special. And I mean special they were. Now, after hiring Ryans though, they knew that the job was not finished. They had to make sure that they used all of these upcoming picks that they had to the best possible capabilities they had to make sure that they could do this rebuild as fast as possible. And don't forget either that because of the fleece of the trade for Watson, the Texans would have 11 total picks for the 2023 draft and was just the beginning of the Texans dynasty. In one of the most heavily talked about quarterback drafts, no one knew who would go #1. Would it be the smart-minded kid out of Alabama, the athletically gifted kid out of Ohio State, or the kid with the hot girlfriend who put mayonnaise in the coffee out of Kentucky? Still can't believe that. And it was safe to say that nobody really knew who would go #1 overall. But in the leading days to the draft, disaster would strike not only for the Texans organization, but for one of the top prospects in the draft as well.
We've got breaking news out of the NFL, and it is big. The Chicago Bears are trading the #1 overall pick to the Carolina Panthers.
Sources say the Carolina Panthers are moving all the way from number 9 to the #1 overall selection, trading with the Chicago Bears for the right to draft any quarterback they want.
And everybody's trying to figure out exactly what Carolina do. Look, I think the pick will boil down to either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
#1 overall is Bryce Young out of Alabama, a guy who is familiar with the S2 test, reportedly. He scores a 98. But on the other end, we have CJ Stroud, who scored reportedly an 18.
The low score has pretty much predicted failure. That's across the board.
And now, don't get me wrong, I know Stroud's draft stock didn't completely plummet, but people were now so much more skeptical of how successful this kid could be because of this S2 test. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think Stroud said it best.
I'm I'm not a test taker, so I play football for me. But at the end of the day, man, I don't got nothing to prove to nobody, so I'm not going to sit here and explain how I process football. The people who are making the picks know what I can do.
By now it was draft day, and there was only one question. Who would the Texans get to take at number 2 and 12 with the pick gifted to them in the Watson trade?
Hello? CJ. What's up, Nick? What's happening, brother? How you doing? I'm doing well. I'm feeling a lot better now. Welcome to Texas, bud.
With the second pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select CJ Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State.
This pick would alter the trajectory of this franchise forever. But in that moment, no one knew just how much it would. What the Texans would do next, though, would absolutely shock the NFL world.
Wait, what? Wait, what? The Texans just went up to number 3?
Oh! After weeks of speculation, we know we have a trade. We will get to the details. Houston is on the clock.
Houston Texans are trading up to number 3.
Congratulations, Nick Caserio.
The Arizona Cardinals have traded the 3rd pick to the Houston Texans.
Let's go, my man. Let's go.
Will Anderson Jr.
It was plain and simple. The Texans wanted to get their guys, and that's exactly what they did. They didn't care what anybody said. They wanted these 2 guys, and they got them. Like, these 2 picks would solidify the Texans as being the biggest winners of the 2023 NFL Draft. Not only did they get their future franchise quarterback, but the anchor of their defensive line and what would turn out to be the 2 best players on both sides of the ball from that draft. On top of this, the 3rd rounder they got from the Watson trade would also go down as a major hit of a pick, landing the explosive Tank Dell, and yet again proving how much of a fleece this trade has become and was just the beginning. Coming into the 2023 year, many people were picking the Texans to barely win 6 games with a young roster and a new head coach, but they would absolutely blow those low expectations out of the water and become one of the scariest teams in the NFL. CJ Stroud went on to prove that he was the best quarterback from the 2023 draft class and that those test results were complete BS. He had developed great relationships with his wide receivers Nico Collins and rookie Tank Dell, putting the Texans on the map and going on to put together one of the greatest rookie quarterback seasons a rookie has ever put together, and I'd even say is now easily a top 10 quarterback in the league with the likes of Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow. To finish this season though, the Texans went on to win 3 out of their last 5 games, and one thing that stood out to me in those 2 losses that came in those 5 games was that they were when CJ Stroud was out with a concussion, almost proving how important he is to this team, and I honestly think should have won MVP last year. They finished the season 10-7, but easily could have been a 12-win team had Stroud not gotten hurt. They were able to lock up their first playoff berth in over 3 years. DeMeco Ryans not only changed the culture in Houston, but had absolutely rebuilt the franchise in less than a year. They had become the first NFL team to win their division under a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback. The craziest thing though is that despite being so dominant with Stroud all year and the defense playing so well, people still didn't pick them to beat the Browns in the first round of the playoffs. But yet again, the Texans did what they had done best all year and proved the doubters wrong. Despite being 2-point underdogs, the Texans would go on to absolutely dog walk the Browns. It absolutely never looked close. But after defying the odds all season, their magical run would be put to a halt by Lamar Jackson in the Baltimore Ravens' dominant run game and ultimately defeat the Texans by 24 points in the divisional round of the playoffs. Stroud would go on to be announced as the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Will Anderson would go on to become the Defensive Rookie of the Year, becoming only the 4th team in NFL history to have both Rookie of the Years on the same team. This just proves how insane and how fast the Texans were able to rebuild this team into an elite contender. After all, completing a rebuild is one of the hardest things to do in the NFL. Injuries happen, draft picks don't pan out. It's just a place you don't want your franchise to be. Just ask the Carolina Panthers. They will forever regret not taking Stroud, who could go on to become a future Hall of Famer. But on the other side of the coin, if you hit your draft picks and land some solid pieces in free agency, then your franchise could turn around quick. And as I said earlier, speaking of free agency, how did the Texans manage to do this again?
Diggs, of course, is a 4-time Pro Bowl selection and a former
first-team All-Pro wideout who has played with Josh Allen for the past 4 years in Buffalo. Now he's headed to Houston to catch passes from the reigning Offensive Rookie of the Year in CJ Stroud.
Like, I think yet again, this just goes on to prove that the Deshaun Watson trade will go down as one of the most franchise-altering trades of all time. And now the Texans look like one of the most threatening teams in the AFC and potential threats to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs dynasty, and honestly, the entire NFL for years to come. And being able to have all of this while having your future of the franchise be on a rookie deal not only helps put money in other places, but will allow for the Texans to spend more freely on players that will help Stroud excel and take that next step into becoming a top 5 quarterback in absolutely no time. Now, who knows though? Maybe the Texans just have high expectations now that they just get crushed by them and completely fall apart this year. Let me know down in the comment section below, what do you guys think is going to happen to the Texans this year? Give me a record prediction. Honestly, I think they're going to win the AFC South, and it's going to be by a large margin. Like, I'd say they at least are a 12 or 13 win team, especially with the acquisitions they made in the offseason. But let me know down in the comment section below. And if you haven't, make sure that you guys join our Discord. I really want to continue growing this amazing community we have over here. We already have like 200 members in there, and it's a great way just to talk about football. I usually put my grid in there. You guys give me suggestions for videos that you want to see up next, and also a preview of what's upcoming this week. And on top of that, I will be doing an NBA bracket with a cash prize. So that's even more reason to join this Discord. Make sure you guys hit the link below. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.